Hello and welcome to the European Resilience Initiative Center video podcast. Today our guest is Jake Bro, who is a United States Air Force veteran who served as a nuclear and missile operations officer, and now he's a host of a YouTube podcast, Jake Bro, with 459,000 subscribers. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you that you have found time, and recently you have raised with your community over $1 million support for Ukraine. That's amazing number, amazing sum. We will talk about it a bit later. But now I want to ask you I want to start with a more general question. Why did you decide to start your focus in your podcast on Ukraine? You have Ukrainian flag, you constantly report about Ukraine, you have your community, and it's understandable that now it is what you're doing, but how did you come to this idea?
I started my YouTube channel 5 years ago while I was serving in the Air Force. And initially I was just talking about finance and investing topics. So in February of 2022, when the full-scale invasion began, I already had this YouTube channel, about 80,000 subscribers. This was the #1 news story in the world, so I decided to make a one-off reaction video. That reaction video to what was happening in the news got 3 times my normal amount of views. And so the next week I made another video. The next week I made another video. I was kind of alternating between my normal finance content and just what was happening. And within 2 months, my channel doubled in size. I was at 160,000 subscribers. And that's when I kind of realized that my time probably was more valuable dedicated to talking about the full-scale war rather than my normal content. So it wasn't my goal. I just kind of transitioned into it, and it's been 2 years, and I've made probably close to 500 videos talking about Ukraine since then. So I'm just trying to do what I can as one individual on the other side of the world.
What was for you the biggest discovery regarding Ukraine? Like, many people discovered Ukraine after the full-scale invasion. I guess like many from your audience were among these people who never knew what is going on there. But what was the discovery #1 for you during this war?
I didn't know much about Ukraine prior to 2 years ago. I knew about the Chernobyl accident. I knew it was a former Soviet republic. I knew where it was on the map. But as far as the culture, the history, the people, the geography, I couldn't explain anything really to you. So it's been, a nice discovery for me. What's really inspired me is what the Ukrainians want. They want real democracy. They want real freedom. They want independence from Russia. And this is something that I think, as far as the West, the democratic West, I feel like we've kind of forgotten. What they're fighting for is what I think we in the West have taken for granted, especially the last 30 years. Since the Soviet Union collapsed, I believe we've lost our focus of what kind of values as a society we want. So what the Ukrainians are striving for is the ideal, and that's something that I think has been maybe lost a little bit here in the United States. So for me, what they're fighting for has inspired me and given me purpose and meaning, and hopefully that when I make my videos, I'm reminding other people of the ideals they're striving for and that we take for granted.
That is absolutely great. And don't forget first to like and share and subscribe this video, but also to subscribe to Jake Bro's account with 459,000 subscribers. It's absolutely a channel you need to subscribe and you need to have a look at with the fresh insights from Ukraine and from the expert community. And we're talking to Jake Bro, who is a United States Air Force veteran who served as a nuclear and missile operations officer, and who is now a host at his podcast focusing mostly on Ukrainian news. And recently you have launched a campaign of support for Ukraine, raising donations. And what was your initial goal before you raised 1 million? And why do you think that people have donated that much money for Ukraine?
There was a different charity. It's called Charity Water. I think they drill for fresh water in remote areas that don't have access to it. And I had heard about this idea of donating your birthday to a nonprofit or charity. And then rather than people buying you gifts or taking you out to a nice restaurant, instead they make a donation to the charity of your choice. So I saw a YouTube video talking about that organization, and my birthday was coming up. It's a nice round number. I turned 40 on May 14th. So I set the bar low. I said, I have over 400,000 subscribers. So I said for my 40th birthday, let's try and fundraise $40,000 with the 69th Sniffing Brigade. That's enough to purchase 2 trucks. My secret goal was 100,000. My wildest dream goal maybe was 200,000. Uh, but I think I think I made a good intro video explaining the organization and why it was a worthy cause to support. I've also never done anything like this. I've never asked my audience for money. I've never asked my audience, hey, I'm partnered with this organization. Will you make a donation to support a campaign I'm taking responsibility for? So my audience just responded incredibly well, and over 15,000 people participated, and it just kind of went nuts. We hit 40,000 within the first like hour or two, and 150,000 like the first day, and then it kind of caught fire on social media, and NAFO and all the cartoon dogs were talking about it and sharing it. And once it got over 500,000 by like the third day, everyone had the same idea as I did. Like, what if we could take this to a full million? A nice round number sounds pretty cool, and it was a great week. We hit over a million by the 6th day.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And I can share a similar experience, like not 1 million, but like 100,000 up to 170,000 euro donations in Germany being raised. But in Germany, I can particularly explain it why people donate. Because people in Germany are really pissed off with what our chancellor is doing or what he's not doing. And to many people who donate in Germany, and we in particular raise donations for the drones of Ukrainian army, 47th Brigade, 92nd Brigade, and other units. And people write in comments like, I'm not happy with what Scholz is doing. I want to apologize for what my government is not doing. Here is the money. But what are the motives of your audience? Do they share their thoughts? Why do you think they donate that much money?
I wish maybe I had better insights on who specifically watches me, but with my content, I try to focus on human aspects, human stories. I try to share as many clips as I can. I always have to get around copyright problems with YouTube, but if I can share a personal story, I like to do that because people respond better, in my opinion, to human stories rather than just all the constant map updates that a lot of channels do. I don't personally like doing map updates. Obviously, every square inch of territory matters to Ukrainians, but big picture, grand scheme of the war, when a wheat field is taken, I don't think that's news that needs to be reported every single day. Why did they respond so well? And I just know that because I'm emotionally involved, they're also emotionally involved. When people are emotionally involved, they care more. And when people care more, I do think they're willing to be generous. And if they have extra money and it's going towards a good cause, they do want to make a difference and they do want to help make change in the world.
That is absolutely moving, and indeed, a lot of people in both Germany and the United States, they want to support Ukraine. They're doing a great thing and donate really a lot of money. When you report like for over 2 years already about this war, what is your general idea? What is the biggest problem the Ukrainians face? Like you have your experience with the United States Air Force, and obviously Ukraine has a problem with jets. Like they don't have enough Air Force. They have like other strong areas like sea drones, etc. But Air Force is not their strength, unfortunately. What do you think when you're as a U.S. Air Force veteran? When you look at this war, what do you wish the Ukrainians? Where do you think they have like something which could help them?
The hot issue this week is the restrictions placed on Ukraine concerning using Western weapons on the territory of Russia. My video yesterday, we talked about this, but I am convinced that Russia is trying to open up new fronts and extend the front lines across Kharkiv and Sumy and Chernihiv so they can create this asymmetrical advantage because Ukrainians are limited. They're limited in being able to use artillery and Gimler's rounds and ATACMS on the territory of Russia. This policy has to change. This is not Ukraine's fault. This is an artificial limitation put on them from the United States and other Western countries. But in response to your question, top of my mind, this policy has to change this week so that Ukraine at least can strike into these border territories to stop these troop concentrations, get those ammo depots, get those command posts, and prevent Russia from extending the front lines.
Many German experts with whom I talked, they believe that the German army, Bundeswehr, if it would have fought in Ukraine, given the situation, with the lack of ammunition which Ukrainian army has, with the limitations on usage of army, would not be able to hold the line like the Ukrainians do. I'm not sure, if the U.S. army would be able to do the job being on the place of the Ukrainian army. But when you look at the lines of the Ukrainians, do you think there is any experience which the Ukrainian army has, which the Western army do not have?
Well, what Ukraine has been doing, holding back the Russians the last 2 years, is something that no NATO or Western army would do. And they're doing this without proper air support, without aviation. So the United States Army is not built to fight a war without the U.S. Air Force or Navy pilots. It's all combined arms tactics where all the branches in a real war environment would have to be coordinating with each other and working together. So Ukraine did not have a good military going back 2.5 years. They had to build it while fighting a war against what was supposed to be the second most powerful military in the world. Concerning Russia, though, I don't respect Russia. There's nothing the Russians have done in the last 2.5 years that has impressed me. They have underperformed, given all of their tremendous advantages at every point, due to corruption, due to their soldiers mostly being there against their will, conscripts, mobilized men. So there really is no comparison to what would the United States military or army or even the German military do in the same situation, because that's a hypothetical, but Ukrainians are fighting for their cities, their people, their lands. I wouldn't know what that feels like. The United States has never been threatened on the ground. So people, when defending their homeland, defending their freedom, they're just motivated different, and the human spirit has a way of finding a way.
That is what many Hollywood movies represented. Actually, if we look at the modern Hollywood movies, there is always an invasion by aliens or by some other species. Or when you look back into the Cold War era, there were also movies like The Red Tide about an invasion in the US. It's not a paradox that in the Hollywood movies, the US Army always fights in the backyard of some Springfield, Colorado, but in real life, it has never happened.
The official policy of the United States military, the doctrine for the last 70 plus years, has been the United States needs to be able to fight two different wars at the same time and win both. Because the United States was fighting the Japanese in the Pacific and then helping defeat the Nazis in Europe, that's just been the policy. We spend so much on our military because we're supposed to be the arsenal of democracy. So we have tremendous capacity. We have all of these resources. Everyone always talks about these 4,000 Abrams tanks parked in the deserts out west. Why aren't we using them? And it's all for capacity. If two wars broke out at the same time and the United States had to do a draft, the United States would find 10 million people to fight those two wars. So when it comes to Hollywood movies and all that stuff, it's fun. It feels good. But yeah, I don't think the homeland of the United States is going to be invaded anytime soon. The existential threat throughout the Cold War has always been ICBMs, nuclear weapons being launched from the territory of Russia. So Russia is our greatest geopolitical adversary. I know everyone says China is the bigger threat, but China doesn't have 6,000 nuclear weapons pointed at the United States at all times.
When you talk about this potential danger of fighting two wars simultaneously, in Ukraine, many say that the war which the United States was preparing for, a European war, a big lunge, like a big, like full-scale attack of Russia against the West, is already happening. And that's why many in Ukraine don't understand why the US doesn't send its troops to Europe, not maybe to Ukraine, but to reinforce the NATO allies. Uh, does it mean that for the United States government, the war has not started yet?
Officially, it's not. And I think there's this wishful thinking, especially in the Biden administration, that we can somehow de escalate this and Russia is willing to go back to this detente prior to, 2014 ideally, but to 2022 specifically. But I don't think we're going back to that world. I think we've already crossed that river and there's no going back. I think authoritarians around the world are not happy with the status quo. The number one rule to the international based order, this is the one rule that you can't break. You can't invade your neighbors and redraw the maps. I mean, the United States is willing to look the other way on a lot of stuff. Both Russia and China have mass murdered their own people in large quantities. The United States will condemn you, but will still do business with you. They'll still buy your products. They'll still buy your oil. But you can't invade your neighbors and redraw the maps because then that'll never end. It's never enough. How I explain this to people is in the post World War II era, this has been the anomaly for human history. 10,000 years of human civilization, we've always had empires. Empires are always expanding or else dying, collapsing in on themselves. And when an authoritarian achieves supreme power in their own territory, when they have gotten rid of the courts, gotten rid of the free press, gotten rid of all their political opponents, they just do the same thing every time. The pattern just keeps repeating itself. They can't help themselves. They have to attack their neighbors to try to steal their stuff. And the United States for the last 70 years has been saying, let's try something different. We're going to be the police of the world. We're going to prevent people from falling back into this pattern of concentrated power and just attacking your neighbors, killing their people, and stealing their stuff. But China and Russia are not happy with this. They want to go back to the age of empires. They want to, because they're the hegemons of their region, they want to exert their power and they want to consolidate. And the West needs to wake up and stop this from happening today because it's only going to get worse if we ignore it another 5 years.
China is looking what is going on in Ukraine, and step by step, China increases the stakes. And now we see the exercise around Taiwan. Does it mean that China believes that they get more and more free room, like for maneuver, because of the U.S. reluctancy?
Well, the United States is duty bound to intervene. What is the definition of intervening? I could make a dedicated video talking about how the United States would respond if China militarily moved on Taiwan, but the United States is not going to put too many of our own soldiers in harm's way. It's going to be the Taiwanese doing most of the fighting. But the threat that the United States places on China is just a naval blockade. China is a net importer of energy and a net importer of food. And if the United States Navy goes to a couple strategic choke points, such as the Straits of Malacca, and just no ships get in or out to mainland China, then China as a country fails within 6 months. Without food, without energy imports, I mean, we're talking about mass famine and total chaos of their society. So China making a move on Taiwan would be devastating for the Taiwanese people. Millions would die probably, but mainland China would suffer more in the long run.
But if the US has not intervened in any significant way when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Russia is much weaker than China, why would the US intervene in the case of
China
Taiwan?
has fewer nukes. China is building ICBMs out west. They're building intercontinental ballistic missiles, but Russia, as far as who can do more damage to the mainland United States, Russia's the bigger threat.
How much of nuclear blackmailing is in game when we talk about the US involvement or non involvement in Ukraine?
Well, it's all nuclear blackmail. If Russia did not have nuclear weapons, this war would have been over a year ago. Russia knows because they have nuclear weapons and they threaten to use them every single day on Kremlin state TV. They know this has a beneficial effect. It does deter people. When you look at people like the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, nukes is his number one issue and why he's been so reluctant to send this or do that. Even this week, when we're debating can Western weapons be used on the territory of Russia, the only concern Jake Sullivan has is, well, what if Russia decides to nuke New York City or something? So China still has nukes. They can still threaten us, but it's not a comparable level. 300 versus 6,000.
How realistic is the Russian nuclear threat for you?
To me, not at all. This is the position I've taken based on my knowledge and experience. But if Russia tried to use a nuclear weapon, I gave like 10 reasons in this video why it's a bad idea, and it doesn't help them at all. But the top two, if Putin decides to use a nuclear weapon, then Putin just basically committed suicide. Putin will have to pick his favorite command bunker and go underground, and he'll never be able to come back to the surface. Because the reason why the West, the United States, wants Putin to remain in power is because we believe he is a rational actor who will not use nuclear weapons. If he uses a nuclear weapon, the primary reason for keeping him alive is now gone. How do you get worse than the person in charge wanting to use nukes out of convenience in a war of aggression? So the number one reason why Putin will not use nukes is he's a dead man if he does. The number two reason is China and India have told Russia not to do this. They're the other nuclear powers. If China and India ever decide to participate in economic sanctions in response to Russia using a nuke, that would be the end of the Russian economy.
But do you think that this war, independently on how long it will last or how it will end exactly, that this war will lead to more proliferation of nuclear weapons?
Absolutely. And the reason, the worst reason is Donald Trump. Donald Trump threatening to break up NATO, threatening not to respond if a NATO country is attacked. Doesn't matter what reasons Trump gives, the consequences are every country that used to think that the United States was their ally and our nuclear umbrella was extended to them, they're now feeling they can't trust the United States. Australia, Poland, Finland, Germany. If you can't rely on the United States because Donald Trump doesn't care about agreements, promises, or allies, then the proliferation will be the worst in free and democratic countries that don't think the United States is a trustable ally anymore. The opposite side of that coin is authoritarians. If Russia is allowed to attack and steal their neighbor's territory, and the reason why we allowed them to do it is they had nuclear weapons, then every dictator in the world is going to say, well, if I want to attack my neighbor and steal his stuff, I need a nuclear weapon, and then I get a free pass, apparently. So it's a dangerous precedent on both sides. And over the next 20 years, nuclear proliferation is not a good thing. There's no advantage to Saudi Arabia getting nukes or Turkey getting nukes or any other crazy country, Brazil getting nukes. But if we stay on the current path we're on, if we don't change course, the world is going to become a lot more dangerous.
And what we are observing now is also the weakening of NATO, as when President Donald Trump, if elected, would say, I will not step up for my allies, then many European countries would decide to create their own military allies parallelly to the NATO, but that would weaken the NATO as the organization.
NATO today is stronger than it was 2 years ago, with the addition of Finland and Sweden, with the increase in spending in response to Russia's invasion. NATO is now more a focus and important than it's ever been in the last 30 years. As far as Donald Trump, I don't think he's going to get elected in November, but if he does, I know in the European Union they're already talking about creating a parallel European defense force, which would be technically a subgroup of NATO, but is really there to exist in the event the United States abandons NATO. So let's hope Donald Trump doesn't get elected in November, because I think that, yeah, uh, he's going to not fulfill his commitments to the NATO alliance.
What is happening in the political discussion in the US now, especially in the Republicans Party? We have seen a U-turn in policy of Speaker Johnson, who has turned into the biggest supporter of Ukraine. What is going on there?
I wouldn't call him the biggest supporter of Ukraine. I think that he's switched to more or less being ambivalent on this issue. I follow Speaker Johnson on Twitter, and he mentions Israel every single day. He talks about the southern border. But since the 60 billion aid package was passed a month ago, he's not mentioned Russia or Ukraine once. So what happened is, in the United States, this is a losing issue for Donald Trump. More than 60% of Americans support sending additional military aid to Ukraine. So by blocking this aid bill, politically, this was hurting Donald Trump in the lead up to the November election. So Johnson flipped on the issue. He was refusing to schedule a vote. He caved to the will of the supermajority. 72% of people in Congress voted to pass that 60 billion aid package. So Donald Trump and Speaker Johnson just don't want to talk about it. If it's easier to say let it pass, or let Speaker Johnson just said let Ukraine conduct the war however they see fit. He's not doing that as a pro-Ukrainian position. He's doing that out of political convenience because he doesn't want to talk about this issue. It's not a winning issue for Donald Trump or MAGA Republicans.
And this will be, according to you, the situation until November, or will we see new political fighting in the US around Ukraine, or is this issue closed practically?
This issue is done through November. There's no reason to talk about it. This defense aid bill, which should have been for the fiscal year October of last year to October of this year, neither party wants to talk about this prior to November. But come December and January, we're going to have this fight again about the next aid bill that should be passed. I don't believe MAGA is going to allow this. I don't think Speaker Johnson is going to allow this. Come December or January, they're going to bring out the same old arguments of Ukraine is corrupt, it's a losing war. If you want the war to end faster, just let Russia win. And, we can't let this be another Vietnam, another Afghanistan. These stupid arguments. Donald Trump doesn't support Ukraine. He'll never support Ukraine. Donald Trump loves dictators. He loves Kim Jong-un. He loves Vladimir Putin. He loves MBS in Saudi Arabia. So
what do you think needs to happen in Ukraine that bring US to more support for Ukraine, or to a decision that Ukraine may use US weapons against Russia?
I think Ukraine is doing everything they possibly can do to hold the Russians back and win this war. So in the United States, this is an internal fight. People like me, have to be strong advocates, and we have to promote our narrative that Ukraine is a country that wants democracy and they want peace with their neighbors. Russia is the aggressor. Russia is waging a war of genocide, and American values demand that we help these people. So Ukraine is already doing everything they can. I applaud them. They have my uh, respect. But in the United States, people who support Ukraine have to be louder than the people who tarnish and ridicule Ukraine because for whatever reason they're pro-Russian. This war is not going to end well for Russia. I'm not concerned in the long run, but this is a continuous fight to maintain support, maintain awareness, maintain uh, a positive outlook that Ukraine indeed is going to win this war, which I do believe.
And we all hope that it will happen because it's in our all interest that Ukraine wins and Russia is got defeated and stop threatening the West. That was Jake Braw, who is a United States Air Force veteran who served as a nuclear and missile operations officer, and now he hosts a YouTube podcast, Jake Braw, with over 459,000 subscribers. And recently he has raised $1 million of support for Ukraine. Thank you for that. Thank you, Jake, for having been here, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sergey.
And don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe to Jake Braw channel and to the European Resilience Initiative Center channel, and stay with us and wait for the new interviews.